Welcome back to Wizard Supercoach. Third day in a row. I don't know what's gotten into me. I'm really high on enthusiasm for Supercoach right now, so just riding that wave. I've actually decided that I'm going to try and do one video every day until the season gets here. So, I don't know, by my calculations, that's probably about another 40 videos or something. So, do I think I can actually do it? Well, probably not because of kids and work and stuff like that, but I'll give it a red hot go. So currently sitting at 148 subscribers, so two more and I'm at the 150. Be nice if I could get them probably within the next day or so. So if you're watching and you enjoy it, you know what to do. Hit the button, because I can guarantee you there's going to be more of this hopefully informative stuff coming up over the next month and a half or so. So I've done a video similar to this last preseason, and it's pretty straightforward. It's points per minute kings. So this is all the players in this first two and a bit columns that go at 1 point per minute or more. So what we're looking for here is players that may break out. I think if you look at the points per minute and then you try and identify low tog, then it's a pretty good indicator that, you know, this player could break out or at least improve pretty well. So last year's video, there was a few in there that fit the criteria. So like Sam Flanders, Darcy Cameron, a few others. There's a couple that are still on this watch list part down here, but yeah, the signs were there. So definitely something to get out of it. I'll just quickly run through them. We got like the absolute studs at the top. So you got Bont, Gawn, Butters, Flanders. It's a real pity that Yo, Crouch, Wines, Cutler, others, that they're really low tog players and they're never going to reach high tog. It's just the way they are. They're getting on now. But yeah, their points per minute is insane. If they, in another world, if they obviously were getting like above 80 tog or whatever, they'd be up there with the top players in Supercoach. So I want to look at Butters first. Now, this is all done on adjusted averages here. So taken from DFS Australia, which is the best tool out there. It does include finals, which is why Butters is slightly lower average than what he got in the game, in the home and away season. But yeah, it's the only way to do it because that's what they have on there. So looking at Butters, 78% tog. That's a little lower than most midfielders. If you have a look through here, you can tell most of them are like low to mid 80s. It's probably just the player he is. He's never really had above 80 time on ground, except for when he was a rookie. And I don't think he was playing midfield much back then, so that would be why. He's kind of that bash and crash, but I think there is actually scope there for him to improve, like his tog. If it does improve, then he could be actually value there. Even though he averaged 120, he could go up. You could see him get towards 125, even 125 itself. So it's a good thing to watch when you're looking at something like this, is keep in mind how players are going in the 2K and 3K time trials and things like that, or what running group they're in, because there's fair indicators there of how much time on ground they usually get. So next one up, well, next couple I should say, you got the Fremantle pair down here. So you got Shrek and Young. I'll start with Shrek. So he's pretty popular at the moment. A lot more people seem to be picking him as each day goes by, or at least talking about picking him. He definitely presents some value. He's slimmed down. He's lost 15 kilos for anyone that doesn't know. And he's running better than ever. So does that mean his tog is going to increase? I think it could. So he's already got that really good points per minute, and he was going at 104.9 in 2024. Let's say the tog gets up somewhere towards the 80 mark, which would allow Jackson to play more forward. I don't know if Fremantle would actually do it, but you know, if he's that fit, then why not? He's obviously a way better ruck than Jackson is, I think. So it could actually, you know, there could be some real value there for Shrek looking at this. And I know there's other reasons why and stuff. Like, he's always been a good scorer, but injuries have always been his problem. So yeah, this is fairly interesting, I think. Hayden Young as well. He suffers from low time on ground, as you can see there, 74%. And as I said before with Butters, you're looking at like low to mid 80s for most midfielders, or at least the top midfielders and stuff. Now Young's he's pretty young. So if you watch most players, naturally over time, their TOG seems to increase until they get, into their twilight years. So I expect a bit of a jump there. Fremantle also, they spread the load a fair bit through their midfield, so that could kind of limit it. But yeah, I think he definitely has room for improvement on that TOG, and he's only going to get better as he works out how to play midfield better. He's only had the one proper season in there, and he kind of got better as the year went on. So definitely would keep my eye on Young, and just based on that TOG, like sooner or later it's got to go up. I think you can't be that unfit that you've got to keep being benched that many times like he was this year, because it was a frustrating own, a frustrating watch, and to still be on an AFL list if you're that unfit, I don't think it's possible. I don't think it's happening. He's obviously, he's fitter than that suggests. It's not too much to talk about here. Grundy's obviously fairly low TOG for a ruck, but that's how he's more or less always been, especially in the last few years. That's not going to rise anytime soon, I think. We keep going down. There's not really much left in this column, I think. They're all pretty straightforward. Or here, probably until you get to Tuke Miller. So he's an interesting one. He's always been pretty high time on ground. He's a super fit dude, and he's now at 79 for the last season, 79% time on ground. So he scored 106.6 adjusted average, which is pretty good. You'd probably want him at like 110, but if he returns to his previous TOG and adds maybe 5% to that, which he definitely could do if he gets a good run at the preseason and stuff this year, then he probably is looking at that 110 average. So he's probably underpriced in my opinion. So one to keep an eye on. It's just a matter of what Gold Coast are going to do with their midfield. Now, I've been guessing through all the videos this year, pretty much, when I've mentioned midfields that don't really change. I guess that Gold Coast were the three that took the most CBAs, like the three starting players from any team that took the most CBAs. It's actually not. It's actually Brisbane, and then you've got Gold Coast is second, but close enough. So yeah, they obviously don't mind leaving those three in there, Miller, Anderson, Rao. So yeah, it is likely that Miller could get back up there and start getting those extra CBAs as well. A good thing about him, he can play outside of the CBAs too. He can pretty much play anywhere. So we come down to TDK and Will Day. I think both of them are pretty high risk picks. Now, there's another video that I've been working on, or at least been working on the data for it, and it's more or less trying to show in a few different areas which rucks are the riskiest. And I can say with confidence right now that all the Supercoach relevant rucks, TDK is the riskiest guy. He can't get any disruption really to his time on ground or his CBAs or anything. The smallest disruption and it kind of goes to shit. Even Carlton losing, he doesn't score well in. It's all kind of got to go his way or it's really bad. So I guess looking at this though, he's got low time on ground for a ruck. I mean, he is young, but again, if you look at the top rucks, most of them, they're probably going at like mid 80s to low 80s, same as the midfielders. So there's a fair bit of growth there in his time on ground. So that could shoot his average up. The only problem is what I mentioned before. So he's very high risk, very high reward kind of player. I'd almost want to play it safe and just go, maybe not pay up the extra for a Gorn, but from what I've found so far, Darcy Cameron is probably the most reliable ruck if you just want that reliable score every week, and he can accommodate those disruptions like the lower time on ground. He scores better in losses, things like that. I'll probably stop talking about that. I'll get to that in a later video. Because the whole ruck conundrum is quite interesting. I think, are people going to have two? Are they going to have three? Who is it going to be? I think you've really got to think outside the square if you actually want to win this year. So Will Day, again, he's another dangerous one. I think the only knock here is his body. So judging by this, his time on ground is low. He's at least 10% below the usual midfielders, but his points are really good. His points per minute. Could he go big? Yes. Judging by this, he could go absolutely huge. But yeah, the problem is it's his body. I don't trust it myself, but the signs are there. If he breaks out, then we saw it coming. If he's healthy, he's going to break out and go full primo, I think. Like, full Uber. Luke Ryan, he's got this amazing time on ground here. So, I think he's always going to be a pretty safe pick based on that. I mean, his points per minute might drop off a bit because of how Longmuir said he didn't want him playing that stat pad kind of game, which is completely fair enough. I mean, it was annoying for us as owners, but you want to win games of football, and what he was doing is not going to win it. I actually think Ryan's a very good player, but not when he plays that style. So yeah, his points might drop, but you're always going to have that as a fallback, like the high tog. I mean, Errol Goulden's the same. He's not even on this list because his points per minute are low, but because his tog is so high, he just scores. So yeah, it's a bit of an insurance thing, I reckon. Now, I mentioned Darcy Cameron before. I think there's a little bit of meat on the bone there with the tog. So 80. You probably go like another 4 or 5. He made a 5% or 6% increase this year from last year. And with it, his points went up by like 13 a game. So yeah, definitely some appeal with Cameron. I don't know why. I couldn't even explain it, but I had a feeling about him from... As soon as the team picker opened, there was something drawing me towards picking him, and I haven't actually done it yet, but the more research I put in, the more I'm liking him as a pick, but I still haven't picked him. So Hunter Clark, he was on last year's list as well, the video I did in that pre-season. He was in the value spot in the, like over here. He really came good. The criteria kind of predicted it. So his tog was really low. It was like 50, low 50s or something, I think. And his score was, I think he averaged like low 60, something like that. But his points per minute were really good. So yeah, I added him in there. And then this year, he's one of the points per minute kings over the point per minute. So yeah, there's still extremely low tog. And he was getting 47% CBAs in the second half of the year. Now, Seb Ross is gone, and he was getting 42% CBAs. So someone's got to take those. It's probably going to be Jack McRae, but there's still CBAs to go around. Like, I read the St Kilda training report today, and supposedly Windhager was in the second team in match sim. So someone's got to be picking up the slack, is my point. It would take a lot of bravery, but Clark could definitely be a breakout. The only problem is, if you're going to pick him at, I think he's about 400k, you're going to be wanting him as a keeper, and he's mid-only, which sucks. But yeah, definitely one to keep an eye on. I guess more the point is, trying to prove that watching the criteria works, like low time on ground, higher PPM. Now, Hewitt's one that has low time on ground, but he's always had that, unfortunately. He had a small bump this year, which got him up to like the adjusted 100 average. But again, he's kind of injury prone, I think, and he's never going to be like, that super primo or anything that we need him to be, or he's not probably going to drop back down to that price we had him at, 2022, and if you started him, he was just enormous. Caldwell is another one. He's quite low for a midfielder here with the time on ground. Hopefully that increases. If it does, then he's going to start to be. If you add a bit of natural progression in there, and it's what we have to remember with these young players. There's always going to be a little bit as they they go on, then yeah, that and some extra time on ground, he'll probably end up as a primo. I think even Kieran Briggs here, like 74% tog for a ruck is pretty bad. I'm not sure what he was getting when he was a full primo, like a couple of years ago. I think he averaged like 106 or something like that. But yeah, he definitely could improve that. I mean, he does play as a solo ruck. I think outside of there, they've only really got like Riccardi, I think, pinch hits or someone else. So there's plenty of room for improvement there for Briggs, but I wouldn't pick him this year because it's probably not going to happen anytime soon. Shill's another one. Yeah, really good numbers here. It's what you want to see, but the problem is he's old and he's always had the really low time on ground. I don't know why. He's obviously probably because he's always come back from injury, I guess. But yeah, I wouldn't say he's like unfit or anything. But yeah, it's just how he is. He's obviously like an impact player. Supposedly though, he's been training at half back, which is interesting. But you know, even if he was, I don't know if you could trust his body or anything to make him worth even looking at as a pick. So Max Holmes is an interesting one. He's another. I wouldn't call him a full-time mid. He plays that half-back role, obviously, as well. He could probably increase his time on ground and, you know, with that, his score a little bit. So he's definitely one to watch. He's pretty popular. I had him in my initial team. Now taking him out for Jordan Clark, but there's a lot of merit in the pick, and, you know, the numbers look pretty good here. Horn Francis as well. Surely at some point he's going to get like that small time on ground increase, especially because if he's not in the midfield, he seems to sit forward. So he's not like an Ollie Wines or whatever, obviously, that when he's not in the midfield, he just goes straight to the bench. So that's a good sign. Yeah, I think we really need more out of Horn Francis this year if he's going to be that starting pick that people are going for. And I mean, I am too, but I think there's a very good chance that he drops off earlier in the year, like he puts in a stinker score, and then you can pick him up really cheap. Kind of kills off the starting pick a little bit. So now we come to the value picks here, the ones to watch, I think. Not necessarily value picks in terms of Supercoach, but just the ones to watch that the numbers here are suggesting that there's probably a breakout coming soon. Cooper Lord I just included because that's a crazy points per minute. He only played the 2 games, but in those 2 games, he got 66% TOG on average. So Carlton obviously rate him to trust him enough to put him in the midfield there, especially at the end of the year when, you know, they want to be going into finals on wins. But yeah, that's pretty good numbers there. Like low TOG, high points per minute. He's got the CBAs. That's pretty good. If he looks like he's going to be in the team. No, I've just remembered that he would be priced at. He'd be a higher price, wouldn't he? Higher starting price because he did play the 2 games. That's annoying. I disregard that one. So Durham, I think, is pretty similar to Coldwell. They both got really good CBAs in the second half of the year. Durham's the one that I always remember. He shut down Bont, that was early in the year, but that's not an easy thing to do at all. It drove me nuts at the time, but it was pretty impressive. Jack Bowes, there's a few in here that, you know, the numbers line up for them that look really good, and I rate Jack Bowes. I think that he should be getting a lot more time in that midfield. But yeah, there's a few here from Geelong. So Bowes, Bruin, and Tom Atkins. Atkins is obviously older than them, so probably not much improvement to go on there. But they're all falling to that Geelong curse, the Chris Scott curse. So they're all low time on ground, but that's just the way the Cats are. And again, I have another video coming at some point. I've been doing the research for that, and it shows the distribution of CBAs amongst teams. So not by player, but, you know, the percentage of like how much the first 3 are in there, how much they use the second 3. So like players 4 to 6, and then all the rest. And Geelong are the worst for it. They've got the biggest spread and the lowest CBAs for, you know, the players that are in there. It's shared around something chronic, and their time on ground is basically the same. It's the Chris Scott way. And, it obviously works because I think that they're way outperforming their list right now. But yeah, it's not great for Supercoach. So although the numbers for these 3 Geelong players look pretty good, I don't know if it's going to actually translate to any kind of breakout just because of the team they play for. Chera, I'm not even going to talk about him too much. We've seen in the past what he can do. The only question on him is, what's his body going to do? Is it going to allow us to pick him or not? If he has a flawless preseason, then probably. Even then, I don't quite trust him. But yeah, the numbers are here, but they're kind of irrelevant because we already know that he's broken out and had really good seasons before. I think McKercher is just going to do what he's going to do. Wardlaw, same natural progression. He was last year. He was in this value group that I pointed out, and he increased quite well. So the numbers, they do stack up. Probably said it a few times, but yeah, they really do. Peatling, really good numbers here. So 0.9 points per minute, really good. That's when he is playing full game. So the adjusted average here of 89.4 was getting 59% TOG. Now he's probably going to get a fair bit higher than that at the Crom, but I do worry, is he just going to be like a Matt Crouch type that's going to consistently have the low TOG? And the reason I say this is because I'm pretty sure I read that when they've been doing the running at the Crom training, I think they're split into 4 groups. I think Peatling's in the third, maybe in the 4th group. So it seems that he's pretty fast, but he's not exactly fit. Like, he's just all speed and no endurance. When I say no endurance, he'd run rings around me, but, that's not hard. So, who's next? Will Ashcroft, yeah, I think all that will improve for him. The biggest worry with him is if he's not in Brisbane starting 3. If you remember back to the start of the video, I said that Brisbane, their 3 starting mids take more time than any other teams. If Ashcroft is outside of the 3, so if they go with McCluggage instead, and I'm not saying that they will, but that's not good for Ashcroft because it's going to be a lot harder to score outside of those CBAs because Brisbane don't use their second 3 mids, which is also Berry and Rayner. They don't use them nearly as much. So that would be unfortunate for Ashcroft. So yeah, definitely a watch there. We need to get some kind of indication. Otherwise, he'll probably improve, but not as much as people think. And in that case, he's not going to be worth the pick. Saligo here, he's got surprisingly low time on ground. I thought it'd be a lot higher than that just from watching games, but that just shows that the eye test can be quite deceiving sometimes, which is why you need a combination of both. Worrell, I said in the last video that I was going to talk about him in a later video. I'm going to say that again. He's got the good numbers and stuff that suggest breakout. He needs a few other things to go his way. I'm going to talk about him more in depth. I'm going to do like team by team reviews, I think, and I'll talk about him in the Crom one, obviously. But yeah, he's a bit reliant on what happens with Keane and a few other things there. Just quickly though, the most unfortunate thing I think with Worrell is that he's had a pretty gradual increase, like gradual improvement, which means he's never really been at a price where it's been the right time to grab him. It's not like he ever really falls back in price enough that, oh my God, Worrell's really good value. So he's up around the 400k mark now, which makes him very awkwardly priced, and you'd need balls of steel to pick him in that case. Speaking of Sam Darcy, so he's a primo breakout it's coming. We just don't know when. Probably this year, who knows, but big men do take longer to develop. I'd say he's already had his like breakout where he's shown what he could do, but now he's got to put it together consistently. So again, these numbers kind of back it up. Like he's on 74% TOG. Yeah, on his day, he's pretty unstoppable. So I don't know. As I said, it's just a matter of who can predict when it's actually coming, but it definitely is coming. Now, I've included Sam Dane. You're probably wondering why, because the guy's never been Supercoach relevant ever. But 66 tog at Gold Coast last year. Now, keep in mind, he didn't play many games, only a few, but he did average 70 in those games where he wasn't sub or whatever. So his points per minute were 83, like 0.83. He's probably going to get more tog at Brisbane this year. If he's been brought in as the Danaher replacement, you'd have to think like they're going to play him right. Is there someone else? Is Logan Morris big enough to play as that second key forward? Obviously, Hitwood will now be the first. Someone let me know in the comments what you think Brisbane's going to do. DR's probably the man to ask. But yeah, I can't really see an obvious solution to that one. So whether they even play a third tool or whatever. But yeah, I don't think Morris is big enough. So that may open the door for Sam Day, who I really like as a player. So it's good that he got a second run at it. And then the last two here, Garcia and Dow. I mean, Dow was on this list last year. He increased his tog, he increased his average, but not enough to make him Supercoach relevant. So, it's coming. He's getting good CBAs now. So I think if he doesn't start scoring soon, then I think he's just never gonna amount to a Supercoach player at all. Riley Garcia, though, I owned him last year. Now there was someone else. I think it was, who was it? Was it Jake Rogers that everyone went for at the time? I went Garcia, and he ended up being a far better pick, it wasn't based on anything. It was just because I could afford Garcia, and it let me get the player I wanted, the primo that I wanted. But it ended up being really good, so I got a soft spot for Garcia. Bevo seems to like him too, and he was even getting some CVAs there in the back end of the year. So, with that tog, that should increase 61%. It's not much at all. You can see there that he's got the higher points per minute. It's above 0.8, so that's what we're looking for, all these players. I can see him, doing fairly well at some point, but yeah, again, he's now probably priced out of being a decent pick, unfortunately. So that's about all I've got. Probably went a little bit longer than I expected, as it usually does. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed it, got something out of it as always. And again, it's, as I always say, it's one thing. It's never going to tell the whole picture. There's too many varying factors in the AFL, and they all contribute at once. So, you got to take it with a grain of salt and pair it up with everything else to try and draw your conclusions from it. As I said before, hit that subscribe button. I want to get to the 150. The 148 it's probably an OCD thing, but it's pissing me off. So yeah, let me know what you think. And been loving the comments lately. A lot more comments. It's good just chatting with you guys about what you see, what you get out of this, and all that. So yeah, thanks for watching again, and hopefully I'll see you in a video tomorrow.